All right, welcome everyone. Senior Center, Community Center Building Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, August 23rd, 2023. This meeting will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast, unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom and Channel 8. The public can access the proceedings by joining Zoom, meeting ID 852-5823-2163, or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220 extension 100 prior to the meeting. Before we, Cindy, I just have a question. Since we are live today on Channel 8, if someone calls that 929 number, do they become a member of Zoom? Okay, great. Just wanted to clarify that. Okay. All right. So call the meeting to order at 4:17. Do I have any edits to the agenda?
I'd like to make a recommendation that we move the public input to after the update for future liability, so it becomes at the end of the meeting, not at the start of the meeting.
That works for me. Yeah. Second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair said aye. All right. So then that will bring us to item number 3. Then review and approval of the minutes from the July 26th, 2023 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to? Oh, man, number 2. We just voted to rearrange the agenda to move public input to the end. Okay. We think, oh, sorry, I can speak a little louder because I think a lot of what public may be interested in will be answered by agenda item number 3.
4, whatever.
Well, yes.
Somebody.
Whatever order it is now. Yes, 4, sorry. All right, so has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Nice job with that.
I didn't write them. I'll give credit to Robert.
Exactly.
All right, any edits to minutes? Otherwise, I get a motion to approve. Ellen. All right, second. Second by Dennis. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
The chair says aye. All right. So that brings us to update on the future viability of the Senior Center Community Center project and the building committee. So I believe, as most people have heard by now, at the August 11th meeting of the Parks Commission, they voted to revoke their authorization to use Field 6 of Crony Park for the building of a community center. I guess I'll read the statement in short. The main concerns were lack of public support, issues with the process and timeline of the project, removal of open space, and it affecting Parks Department priorities. The commission discussed future proposals to build at Crony Park would be considered only if the abutters were consulted before, public input is waived, and the proposed location is in an area that is not being used in any capacity for open space or recreation. This is in addition to initial requirements that were voted on by the commission when Crony Park was first considered. All right, so any discussion around that? Does anyone have, we have a member of the Parks Commission and the Parks Director here. Any questions about that, comments?
Well, I think that the question becomes, is there a path forward without their support? And to what extent does the Parks Commission control what does or does not happen at Brony Park? And to what extent can the Parks Department delegate that power to the abutters?
Those are all interesting questions for which I don't have the answer to.
Beware.
Well, I would only offer this, that I'm not the commissioner, I work for the commission. And Kevin wants to speak, elaborate beyond that. What I believe that statement had to refer to is Parks Commission could not support the project without the abutters having it. Not that they needed the permission of the abutters.
Jeff, would you speak up?
I've been mowing all day. I have a very hoarse voice. This is the best I'm going to be able to do.
I heard.
Kevin, did you want to speak to him?
I can't answer the questions that been asked. And we'd have to look into, to see whether or not the commission can move forward with building up Field 6 without the Park Commission's approval. Personally, yeah, I would like to see if we could do, but in all honesty, I don't know what the legal
I guess precedents are to go forward with it.
Can you clarify that statement? Did it anywhere in the statement say Field 6 in particular, or just said Baroni Park?
It says,
Field 6 in particular.
But then
What
it
did it say?
addresses.
it said that there was a vote of 4-0 with one abstention was cast to revoke authorization to use Field 6 of Peroni Park for the building of a community center.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
In last meeting's notes, Katie had mentioned that it's not just Field 6, but the areas beyond Field 6. And Peroni Park, we have a couple trailers and a beaten up building that we can check into.
That's not the way I understood it. I pretty much understood that it wasn't going to be on Peroni Park.
So that was the sense I got after reading the statement, and then subsequent meetings with Jeff and with Chris, was that it was pretty much a no-go for all of the reasons listed here. It's disappointing to me because I think the project could have been a real asset to the town of Ayer. And it's frustrating for me to have the Parks Commission, the Parks staff, choose one subset of their constituents, the open space advocates, and that's a very valid cause. Like, I've got nothing but respect for that value system, but to allow that sub-constituency of the Parks Commission to decide without going through an established process that the town has for major projects like this, to decide that their interests are more important than the interests of adult recreation in town for learning foreign languages and adult programs of any kind for young families who might want mommy and me yoga or summer programs, and not to mention the seniors, but also for children who want something other than baseball, basketball, and soccer for recreation. I know I have a child who never excelled at those things, but is extremely gifted in other areas. And so it's disappointing for me that one constituency was chosen over the rest of them so early in the process. And again, I've had one-on-one conversations with several of you. I understand, I get it. I'm still disappointed though.
I think we all saw, however, that there was this just growing, it's like a snowball going downhill, that people were just, and part of that was social media or whatever, but particularly with Field 6, I think we knew last week, last meeting, that Field 6 was really probably not viable. And we were looking at other things which would still be difficult. But it also sounds like originally this was envisioned as a partnership project, but it seems to me that it's not really, that the Recreation Department is no longer really interested in partnering on this. Are you?
Well, again, I can't speak for the commission, but I can speak to Parks Department goals. And we have a 10-year plan of a variety of goals that we want to do. And one of those was a community center. However, that goal was not going to be even approached until 2026 or 2027. We had a variety of projects ahead of those. Some we're doing now, some we're trying to get in motion going. So for the Parks Department and the Parks Commission, it would be hard to get a lot, as you're saying, as I believe you're speculating, a lot of enthusiasm behind that. Would we want that to just happen if we could snap our fingers and have somebody do it? Absolutely. Because we still think it's the right idea, and we believe that it was a viable idea. However, as it's been mentioned, probably due to a lot of misinformation being passed about, lack of support, and eventually a real collapse on every end of it. And I'll just add this, from my personal perspective, if anyone's interested, what I saw with this project as it developed, as something tearing this community apart, and I hated that. That's not what we stand for, at least in our department. I don't think anyone does. And maybe not everyone recognized that, but I recognized that. And for me, that was enough to support my commission and what they were trying to do in that.
And I think also we don't really want to start the senior center with a lot of bad feelings from people because they feel that the senior center is taking away their fields and their open space and stuff like that. I don't think we were aware of how difficult that would be. So at this point, I think we should just give up on the Peroni Park as a location and consider, where we go from here. But that's my opinion.
I think that all of the reasons that Jeff cited, that coming into this project, I certainly did in conversations with Jeff and in my, I think, 2 meetings with the Parks Commission, I fully understood that for you folks, or for the Park Commission generally, the need of an indoor gym for basketball was significant. And I think at that time, it was said that for 15 years it had been part of the capital project. And to some extent, we looked in detail at what it would take to make that happen. And it was my understanding, and it remains my understanding, that because Field 6 is underused, rarely used for baseball, 15 nights a week, let's call it 15 to 20, that the community's benefit, specifically, that is, to some extent, this was started as a senior project, but it was clearly indicated by numerous people that the amount of activity, the amount of recreational events that could be held for the broader community would far outweigh any loss of whatever number of games are played at Field 6. And it's disappointing to me that the entire project was hijacked by this notion that we are losing Peroni Park, or that Field 6 need to be saved. My question when I first saw those signs was, saved for what? Saved for who? Because it is clearly the case that the number of children, the number of elderly, the broader community at large who would gain access to Peroni Park, who would be able to enjoy activities there, who would be able to practice their volleyball, basketball, any number of indoor activities throughout the year, those interests were hijacked by a narrow group of self-interests who sought to, quote unquote, save the park. Parks are for people. That's what they're built for. We wanted to encourage people to go to Peroni Park. And one of the ways of doing that, probably the most profound way of doing that, is to have a community center there where people could go and enjoy the park. more people than go currently to the park, I would submit. And it's just unfortunate that certain self-selected personal interests trump all of those long-term best interests of the community.
So I represent the residents, and I agree with Ellen. I feel that I've been living here for over 30 years, and the amount of open space we used to have to the amount of open space we have now is quickly diminishing. And I think everyone agrees it would be great to have the community center, it'd be great to have the senior center, but to eat up open space for it on what was designated for open space does not make sense. And I agree with Jeff. I was away most of the summer, and because of social media, I could see what was going on. I was like, wow, this community is getting really heated. I love this town because it's very family oriented. And I'll tell you, we could drive this and try to get it to Peroni Park, and we can bring it to town meeting, and most likely it's going to get shot.
I agree. I don't
I
think
know
it
a
has
lot
any
of
shot.
families in this town, and I'll tell you, I haven't talked to any of them. They don't even know I'm on the board unless they go online to see my name. So I'm not ruffling any feathers. I'm just representing my feelings and the feelings I know of the people I've, for 30 years, have grown up with my kids and their kids, and everybody beyond that. I just don't think it's a smart place to put it. I just think we need to move on, and we just need to figure something else out. It may take a little more time. I had mentioned on the first meeting, let's look up at the high school and Page Hilltop, that area, the backside of the area, past the football field. Like, let's get someone in and see, how much would it cost to get into that ledge? I think that's a better area. I'm not saying it's the area, but again, Peroni Park, I just think it's just not the right fit for this town.
Yeah, there's no question that, I want to be careful what I say here, because it's a very touchy subject, and I don't want to make any accusations or go over beyond where we should be. But there's no question that the response to Peroni Park was very negative. On top of that, I thought the most significant thing that happened was the Article 97. Now, I'm on the planning board, and I can tell you, I'm not bragging, I have done hundreds and hundreds of hours of research on a lot of things. Okay, and this Article 97 thing was incredible to me that it came up, and where I found it belonged all over town, okay, way more than Peroni Park. So the long and the short of it is that Article 97 was in all probability maybe not aware of by the Park Commission at the beginning, so there was a few things that we had to learn along the way, and once we learned there was an Article 97 protection on the land, not because the town did anything to create the Article 97 protection, but because of the history of Article 97. When a park is used in that particular capacity for a certain amount of time, it's automatically Article 97. So none of us really knew a lot of that. The whole process of taking that out, the legal aspect of it alone, would have been enough for me to say it's nearly impossible. I was hopeful that there would be some kind of agreement, and I'm careful what I say about that statement, okay? There's no possible way that I am going to put my time in to build somewhere else at Peroni Park to get a gym down at Peroni Park with a senior center. It would take an unbelievable amount of effort to figure out how that would fit somewhere else than Field 6. It's a possibility, because you can build anywhere. But the whole steps that would be required to use Peroni Park, between the hassle with, whatever the people in the town think, between the Article 97, between the location near wetlands, the floodplain, it's got everything going for it, including things that many people don't even probably know about. People probably don't know, for instance, that the senior center was built on Peroni Park, that the affordable housing that's there, the community housing for the Council of Aging, is built on Peroni Park, what it used to be before it shrank down.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was like 1931 or something. The town voted to take that land from Peroni Park and let it go to a school. A school burnt down. The school turned into other land. So there's been stuff built at Peroni Park, but it was just too complicated. We need a clean site. I do disagree with what you said, because we put out a report that had 14 sites we looked at, but I want to tell you something. We looked at way more than 14 sites because of the confidential nature of what was going on. But we have looked at a lot of land in town. So it's looks to me like what's gonna happen is we're gonna blow this committee up, and we're gonna go back to a senior center search committee. In the Park Commission until 2026, if they wanna figure out a way to build their gym at Peroni Park or somewhere else in town, the Park Commission is on their own. That's their long-term plan, so I think it works.
Our kids are going to suffer because there'll be no basketball this winter.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm just saying,
Gym's closed.
We'll work it out.
Yeah, but,
I think
and the
basketball
seniors
this
are
winter is-
squished in.
Yeah, that's the more,
It's outside the scope of this committee.
And somehow, as I mentioned to Katie, I don't know how Chapter 34 came into play with Peroni Park earlier today. When
didn't have
the
time to
land
look at
was
what you sent me,
given, when
sorry.
Peroni Park was given. I don't know, but
So what I'm hearing is there are two members of this committee that are interested in continuing to pursue at Peroni Park. There are 1, 2, 3 that are not interested, and 2 by virtue of the Parks Commission vote I would put in as also not interested. Dan, I don't know where you stand on it, but
Yeah, actually, my notes are essentially what Ken was saying, the challenges, the Article 97, never mind the public pressure and the public opinion with it, the limited area to build in the wetlands. So I was kind of on board with Ken that, and then bringing it to town meeting. So I'm on the side of
I think that, to Christine's point, winning on the floor at town hall was always going to be an
Town
uphill.
meeting?
I'm sorry, at town meeting, was always going to be an uphill climb. In the absence of support, active engagement with the broader community from the Park Commission, that uphill climb got excessively steep. It's disappointing. My hope had always been that we would be able to, when we talked about Katie's survey and the number of hours she put into kind of generating that, and our hope to get some level of designs and plans so that we could allow the broader community to see what might be possible, and then to make a selection, make an informed choice, again, in the run-up to the town meeting, to look at these plans, look at what might be possible. Do any of these seem like they might be doable for you? Can you support this? None of that will happen now.
Well, if we look for a new site, on a positive note, we haven't spent any money or done any of that work, which is not going to be needed. So, on a positive note, then, if we reconstitute the committee, not looking at Peroni Park, but in other locations, and possibly come across somebody that was approached during the last search that changes their mind, if we come up with a new property, we're going to need a totally different design, and without the community center aspect of it, just the senior center, which will cost less money and hopefully might get through town meeting more quickly.
So in terms of I think that what we could look at is reallocating the money from ARPA.
Well, so I think that's kind of getting a step ahead. I think our charge for today would be to determine if this group is still interested in Peroni Park, and if not, the vote would be to recommend to the select board that this group be dissolved, and then the select board would then at a later date, would then be looking at where to go from there.
But prior to that, could we, as this committee, recommend to the select board that those $150,000 that were previously allocated to this project be reallocated to a future project for a site of the senior center?
I think we could make any motion that we wanted to. I think they would be, my understanding is they would be independent decisions, but yes, I think we can make any motion we would like to with that regard.
the only place, and I know we talked a little bit about before, and I guess I'm still a little fuzzy, is down where your building is down there. I don't know if that's big enough. There's 2 basketball courts. We would still have 1 versus 2. Hardly ever see 2 being used at the same time. Being able to have it down in that flat land. But again, I don't know, like, the size, the wetlands, all, you know, like, I don't know that.
You know, and that was always a possibility for this whole project. And again, the point of this committee was to explore the viability of Peroni Park for it. And that was always part of the potential outcome of our charter, is that it's not viable, right? But the way the Parks Commission has written their public statement, that's not a possibility anymore. And I spoke in depth with the chair of the committee about this statement and the implications of it. And so it basically eliminates even that area down there. Yep.
And Christine, as Ken was mentioning before, there are just so many other issues. We actually have a plan all rolled up it was made in 1998 for a community center there. And once it was found out that it was both in a floodplain and that it was encroaching wetlands, then that was scrapped.
That can still be done.
Yeah.
You can overcome those 2 things. There's actually, under Article
pretty building.
Under Article 97, the concept of the not community center, but related recreation to the park is a possibility. That is something you can take forward. It's got a connection, direct connection.
For Article 97.
Yes. There's a way to overcome it because the connection is so close.
You know, I don't know how.
For a
the
gym,
majority-
for that building.
But then there's the wetland and the,
It's all over.
yeah. Well, you're way ahead of me on the curve on that one, so I'm just know what people told
They
me.
just filled 5,000 square feet of wetlands by my house to build air solar 2. Right through the wetlands. So, I mean,
I just think it's down low, it's not obstructing the view of the watershed. There's, you know, even if there wasn't enough room to park, people could park at Peroni Park and walk over. I just think if you really wanted it there, that's probably the most forgiving place to put it,
it's small.
yeah,
The gym is only 10 or 12,000 square feet.
there's not enough room.
It'd be up to you guys to figure it out, but based on what I saw, you could fit a gym down there. But a bit, 25,000 square foot building, it's a different story with parking and everything else that goes along.
Parking's a big part.
Ellen, did you?
I just personally feel it's not a viable location anymore,
No,
particularly
it's not.
for the combination senior center and gym. So I would move that we,
Would you like to make a motion?
yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it though. I mean, what would we say that?
I think the motion would be to recommend that the select board dissolve this committee following a report that we would generate saying what we did and how we determined that it was not viable. Because again, that was the charge of this committee, was to determine whether or not building at Peroni Park was possible and recommended.
Right. So moved. Or do you need me to phrase it?
I don't know.
You can
That's
make-
good.
You're allowed to
Do you
make a
need me
motion.
to, you need me to phrase that or?
No, she can make
Okay.
it. The chairman can make a
Yeah,
motion.
the chair just restate it.
All right. Okay, just that I make a motion that we recommend to the select board that the senior center, community center building committee be dissolved following following a report on our findings. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, okay. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Oh, discussion? I need discussion first? Okay.
Any discussion? right?
Any discussion?
After the motion. Anybody else have anything?
Well, I would add that, and a recommendation to reform the senior center search committee.
As a standalone.
Robert? Yeah, just gonna clarify with him.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, just on the matter of procedure. So the committee was created by the select board back in March and specifically charged with the Peroni Park piece. So if the recommendation is to dissolve the committee, then customarily the chair and the vice chair of the committee would make that report to the select board. The select board will dissolve the committee, and though I cannot speak for the select board, we can all agree that the need for the senior center has not gone away. So it would be the purview of the select board, which would be probably their intention to reconstitute the committee with a different scope and charge, probably because we're back to looking for a site, and would constitute the membership of that committee and publicize, for the residents to apply to be on that. So it's sort of like a reset, if you will, on that. But it's the purview of the select board. Two other things, Madam Chair, from my perspective, if I could just add, and I think it's been covered by the entire committee. It is disappointing, as you said, but at this point, it is counterproductive to pursue Peroni Park, and Peroni Park should be taken off of the complete, table on this project. The second thing, just for the record, because there's a lot of misinformation, as was alleviated out there, the opera funds that were allocated up to $150,000, the committee has not spent any of that money to date. I, again, cannot speak for the select board, but to Mr. Curran's point, I know that because the serious need exists and the effort will move forward with the public committee to look for the site, you're going to need resources. So the recommendation, again, it's the purview of the select board to keep that funding for the purposes, it'd have to be in the new scope, is their purview.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I don't think you have to.
That so I think it would be helpful for the select board to hear from us that reallocating that $150,000 for the purposes of a senior center in Ayer, after the dissolution of this committee and the end of the community center project down at Peroni Park, I would think that the select board, to Robert's point, would look favorably upon that, but it would also, I think, communicate to them that we still think that this is an important project that will require funding, because I know that searching for relatively small sums of money during the site selection process was extremely difficult, and having that $150,000 available for the new project, would go a long way to kind of helping it move forward.
So if you said we would do a report that would be given to the selectmen to explain our reasoning for why we think that this committee should be dissolved. And then that could, I assume, include some final recommendations or something like that.
Right, yeah, agreed.
Include reforming the committee with a different scope, as well as maintaining the funding availability.
Yep. I'm taking notes on this as we're doing any other, and I'm happy to work with Ken to draft that report. And then any other themes that we would want included in that?
I think the fact that it's too early for that at the moment, but we're definitely going to go for another RFP for land.
Yes, yeah.
But that might be premature till that other committee's put together.
Right, right, agreed.
So I want to be careful, Robert. I'll ask you a question. So, as you know, in the past, it was a working group because of the nature of some of the discussion regarding privately owned land. Are you suggesting that the new group would be a committee or a working group? Or do you know yet? Maybe you just don't know yet.
No, I do, through the chair, and this is just my opinion, and I'm glad you brought that up, that the first point is that the working group that was conducted, and you've articulated many times publicly the reasons behind that, was legitimate and legal as we move forward. That being said, and I've discussed with some of you, the recommendation, the pathway forward, if you've already taken the vote, this committee dissolves, you report to the select board with that recommendation, which can include the keeping, the funding for that effort. The committee should be reconstituted, re-advertised for the citizens' representatives. It should be a public committee, subject to the open meeting law, public records law, just like this. And to your point on the issue, because I think it's important to note that the likelihood of the efforts will involve potentially private property, we don't know that yet, on occasion, and it's very specific, under the open meeting law exemption, the executive session, but it's very specific, and we'll make that very clear for when we get to that point, if we get to that point, or I should say when we get to that point, that there would be an executive session. So I don't believe it should be a working group. It should be all public. It should be focused on the site selection process. It should also, as it always did, including this effort, and it has to under the law, include, in addition to all of the public outreach, ultimately it is up to town meeting, both in terms of whether the acquisition of the land requires town meeting, the approval of the project, town meeting, the funding potentially of town meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think we also have to alert EOEA that we're not, we're no longer interested in the Article 97.
Right, before we get to, I was just gonna say, there'll be a couple of loose ends, depending on the way that we vote in the discussion for this, some loose ends that will need to be tied up. So we'll get to that in just a second. So is there any other discussion for the motion that's on the floor? No? Okay. So we have a motion to dissolve the Senior Center, Community Center Building Committee to recommend its dissolution to the Select Board. So I guess we're ready for a vote if there's no more discussion. So all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the chair says aye, so that passes.
Did you vote yes?
What's that?
Did you vote yes?
I did.
Good for you.
Okay. Yeah, there were no abstentions, correct?
No abstentions.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that brings us to a couple of loose ends then, as Ellen mentioned. Do you want we need to tie off and update our Article 97 initial inquiry? Would you be willing to reach out to Kurt about that?
I could. Robert, the original letter to EOEA came from Carly.
Yes.
And I did make a phone call to the person who's kind of in charge of that, but do you want me to follow up on that, or do you want to wait and have Carly do it?
She'll be back on Monday, so through the chair, what if I have her connect with you, both of you, and it started with a letter, so it should close out with a letter which can come from both of you.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. And then the same thing, Dan, the letter proposals for the architects, can you reach out to them and let them know kind of where we are and?
Yep. Yeah, I'll let them know.
Okay.
Yep.
Did we get any more?
Yeah, we received 3 proposals last Friday.
Including Caitlin?
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
Madam Chair. Dan, as part of that process, I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but could you give them the heads up that there may at some point in the future be requests coming from the town to look at other, of a smaller scale, shall we say?
Yeah, and that's
Just to
what.
let them put it on their radar.
Respectfully, they put in some work here to put these proposals together, and this isn't the end of everything, so I'd expect we will need an architect at some point. So they'll still know that there is the potential out there for it. It may not have been a futile effort. There may be.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I don't see Alan here. He's probably enjoying some olive oil right now. Robert, do you have any updates as far as next steps for our housing choice application?
Madam Chair, through you to the committee, I did speak with Alan, so there's a pending application for up to $300,000 from the state for this project. I will meet with Alan and we'll just, as on the Article 97, we'll formally notify the program of the change and what I anticipate is withdraw and then we can reapply.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Any other loose ends I'm not thinking of yet?
So in terms of the report to the select board, would we simply, I have every confidence that you and Ken would write the report and then submit it?
Please send me any thoughts you have for it, and then just like we do with the draft minutes, send it out to the committee to.
But I'm just concerned that if we're dissolved, we won't be in a position to approve or.
We're not dissolved until the select board dissolves us.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Okay. So,
Does this committee have a secretary, the group here?
well, Dennis is technically the secretary, but Robert has been graciously writing minutes for
I
us.
was going to recommend the secretary and the chairman put the letter together.
All right. Okay.
Sounds good.
That's fine. Okay, so if there's nothing else for item number 4, I think that brings us back round to public input. Is there any public input? Nancy, you want to come up?
My name is Nancy Giacconi. I live at 18 Pond Street, and my apartment overlooks the park. The first thing I would like to do is on the minutes of the last meeting, my name has been spelled incorrectly.
Oh, there's an extra O in there.
No, it's Jackvony.
Thank you. I will correct that.
Secondly, if I'm part of the self-interest few, as far as the park is concerned, thank you, I'm honored. I also want to thank the town of Ayer, the families, the seniors, everyone who came to arms to save their park. I understand and I know that a new senior center is needed. I see the cars going by. I see the backed up parking and everything. I'm aware of that. I do wish you all the luck, and I know with the persistence of the new committee, if you're forming a new committee, that you will find something. I know that. But at this point, the park is for the community, and if I can make some suggestions for the community as a whole.
For the community as a whole, or for the senior center? I just want to make sure we stay in the scope of
this committee we're talking about.
For the community as a whole, all the townspeople. Personally, what I would like to see is during the summer, more movie nights, maybe one every other week, maybe showing an old-time movie, showing one for the younger kids, like have a pajama party, and then maybe something for the teenagers. I also think that the town, you're having a festival this weekend. Maybe that should be an annual thing. Make it grow. The last idea I had was a band concert. Why can't you have a band concert once a month or once every other month? I used to always go to Townsend from when I was, well, yeah, that high. And all the kids running around having a great time, and the older people are singing to the music. And all these things that I've recommended would be for the entire town, not for a select few. Anything pertaining to like a basketball, indoor basketball, or anything like that should be coordinated to the use of the high school.
So I think these comments where we're going now are better suited for the, I know there are two Parks and Rec
I
committee members here,
understand
but
that.
better suited for
belong
their
here.
meeting. Yeah.
So they're just ideas I'm
Yep.
putting out there, and if I need to go to a meeting, I shall. Okay? But I do wish
You're very
you,
welcome, just so you know.
I'd love to have you.
For those who don't know, she's actually one of our favorite people that keeps an eye on the parks for us.
Gotcha.
I call the police if something's going on or kids are acting up or anything like that. That's how much I care for the park. Okay? And I will continue to do that. You're welcome. So
you,
in
Nancy.
closing, thank you very much for the last couple of weeks of hearing me out. And I look forward to your next project. Thank you very much.
Can I speak from here?
I think for the television broadcast and the Zoom, you have to come up to the microphone.
I'm also one of the self-selected, whatever. I have one of those signs in my yard, and I'm very proud that I do, but that's not why I'm here.
If you can state your name and address.
Laurie Sable, 1 Winthrop Ave. I just wanted to, this might not be relevant because I realize that this group is soon to dissolve, but somebody mentioned that any future plans, I'm paraphrasing, would not or might not consider the idea of the joint senior center, community center. I just wanted to say that I think that's a fantastic idea. I think a lot of people would be on board with that, and I hope that whatever future committee is charged with whatever tasks you have, that will still be on the table.
So
Having a gym next door?
Whatever it looks like.
So as a short answer to that, the committee that would replace this one would go as a standalone senior center because the Parks Commission has made it clear that this is not a priority for them right now. It will be at some point down in the future, but the need for the senior center exists now. So those two will go their separate way. This will become, the next effort would be a standalone senior center.
So there,
That's it.
That,
no ifs, ands, or buts. And is that from reading the statement? Is that from the?
That's
is
from that's from the
interpretation?
statement and the multiple conversations that I have had with the Parks Director and the Parks Commission since that statement was issued. So good.
And if I might add, as this process moved along, starting back, I want to say in December or January, it was made abundantly clear by the park commissioners that they would not publicly support, advocate for, put in the work necessary to have a community center built. They made that abundantly clear. Now, they voted to approve the use of the park, initially, to approve the use of the park for the purpose of having a community center that included a full-size gym. But they were clear in private conversations between me and some of the members, as well as in public comments at public meetings, that they would not champion it, they would not publicly get out and support it, they would not try to rally the community around that idea. So I think now we are in a position where we will try to move forward with a standalone senior center. And again, the Park Commission and the Recreation Department can proceed as they see fit to build or not build what they think is important to the community.
Might the senior center, might the new version of the senior center committee think about a joint center?
I don't want to, I can't speak for what a future committee would say. I couldn't do that. I just don't know how we would possibly build a community center without active partnership of Parks and Rec. And Parks and Rec is just like my department, they're their own autonomous department to determine what their operational and funding priorities are, and they have set forth that that's not a priority for them right now. So I just don't see how that would work.
Well, that's unfortunate and disappointing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Good afternoon. I don't know if you saw the email I sent you late this afternoon.
Sorry, I did see it in passing, but I was headed to doing accounts payable
That's
before I got
perfectly
here.
fine. The email I sent to Katie was about the RFQs that Ken and Dan prepared. I have no doubt that you all knew what you were doing and that they were done right. My question to Katie was, will they be public? Will they be available? And since the recommendation for this committee is now to dissolve or be dissolved, perhaps to close everything into one book or chapter, all of that should be part of the record of this committee.
I don't have, and what is the reasonable expectation for those kinds of things as far as, is that?
Yeah, I mean, they wrote them to the committee, so it could be part of the committee's report as far as I see, like in an appendix or whatever if we want. Yeah, I have them in PDF format, so.
Okay.
Yeah, just so the record is complete.
Okay.
And then I'd also like to share that I'm one of the self-interest members too. And I thank you all for being open-minded. I am a senior. I fully support the senior center, but I love the park. So thank you all for all you've done. We'll work together.
Thank you. Any other public input? I don't see any on. Okay. All right. So if there's no other business, then can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, I'm sorry, Robert, did you have something?
One last thing, Madam Chair, and to the committee. As I think everybody is in support of sort of having clear next steps, sort of put you on the spot, but not put you on the spot. Mm-hmm. When would the committee anticipate transmitting the report and appearing before the select board?
So has the select board decided to have that early September meeting?
Yes, so the select board at their last meeting was definitely going to meet on September 19th as they normally do. And if you were at that meeting, they said they would meet on September 6th if needed. And there are some street acceptances that are needed that have to do with town meeting and the timeline. So I anticipate they are planning to meet, it's Wednesday, September 6th at about between 5 and 5:30 p.m. when they earlier than normal. So what I'm just offering to you is whether the committee anticipates coming for September 6th with the report or September 19th. And
I think that September 6th would be fine.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, so, I'm sorry, Barbara, did you have?
My question is, the people that are waiting to the phone, are we going to answer any of those questions today?
So typically when people are on Zoom, if they have they're just listening, if they have a question that they want to provide public input, there's a little place to raise your hand and it creates a little flag up there. So I don't see any of the raised hands up there, so I don't see anybody waiting to make comment.
Nobody's got a hand up.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
Nobody.
No one has turned up.
Thank you.
Okay, so as far as next steps, Dennis and I will be drafting a report for the culmination of this committee to be presented at the September 6th Select Board meeting. Ellen is going to work with Carly to provide an update to the state on the Article 97 inquiry. Dan is going to get me copies of the 3 letter proposals received for the minutes of this meeting. And then Robert is going to work with Alan to provide an update letter to the state granting agency. Anything I missed? No? All right, so with that, can I get a motion to adjourn at 5:09?
I make a motion.
All right, Marge, okay, thank you. Second?
Second.
Dennis, all in favor?
Aye.
Chair
It's
says
been
aye.
a pleasure to work with all of you.